Kuhn is the fullback with the first and goal. Kuhn gets the ball. Pyle trying to make his way in for the touchdown. What a great second effort. Here comes the. Y'all don't really want it like that. Here comes the. Y'all don't really want it like that. I said so. I keep big bills up in my heart on the dirty like blood. So ain't got no twist in my head, but I'm still dreadful.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Fantasy Fullback Dive, brought to you by the good people at the Roto Street Journal, paving your way to fantasy glory, paving your way to fantasy excellence, acting as your lead blocker to fantasy championships and trophies and all that good stuff. I am your host, Now the Truth Jones. With me, as always, the Wolf of Roto Street himself, and we're paving your way to all that good stuff, even though it's early February. And the Super Bowl hasn't even happened yet. That's how much we give a shit.
Exactly. Psychos, indeed. We're trying to brainstorm, like, what do we talk about? We want to see the people. We want to go live. We want to just try to keep it consistent. Again, every Thursday, 7 p.m. What can we talk? But of course, like these days, the coaching carousel, that's kind of what's spinning around. And so we'll be doing a little bit of a series on that. Now, next week, of course, we'll do our usual prop bets extravaganza. Yeah. You know, our man CJ will be joining for that. Be a good time indeed. But let's start breaking down these coaches. Every year, it's one of the most overlooked factors to fantasy success. I know there's definitely trains of thought out there like coaching doesn't matter. You know, it has no impact on the game. And I just never have understood those people. Like,
it's tons of impact on the game, dude.
Of course, coaching impacts people. Like, you know, you look at Sean McVay just when he first started with the Rams. They went from a bottom 3 offense to the number 1 scoring offense. We saw Todd Gurley become an MVP under him. And last year, yes, the coaching crop really didn't have too big of an impact. We also didn't really do too many shows on it because it was pretty clear none of these coaches were going to do anything too wild with their teams, and they sure did prove that right. But this year, there are some really intriguing names, and we're going to start with the guys we think could make the biggest impact. Just to preview that, Brian Daboll, after what he's been doing with the Bills and going now to the Giants, what he could do for that franchise. And we'll talk about Hackett after his time with the Packers and what he could be bringing to the Broncos. And I really think this guy going to the Bears, that's the next one we'll talk about. Just those 3 tonight. Obviously, we can't do cram like 8 of these coaches into 1 hour. You guys will fall asleep, or we'd be talking about it for too long. So we'll only do 3 at the time. We'll also hit at the end here how we're killing some time now in the offseason. That might be a regular segment we do each week, is what's the latest way we're killing time. Looks like we've already got some hellos in the comments, though. Yeah. We already got some thumbs up, so greatly appreciated from our regulars. Still just tuning in. And it's good to see, right? Who's going to show up. And they're here. There's some of them are here already. So we love that. It does help us continue to grow. Wolfpack, if you enjoy the content, to hit that subs up. Now we got over 2K officially.
What?
We're over 2K.
You think we'll stay there?
Hell yeah. No, you guys better not leave us at this point.
I think we're going to backslide.
Upward and onward only at this point on. So thank you guys so much. So pumped to that. Cheers to you guys. And if you haven't already and you enjoy the content as you watch it here, please do consider that thumbs up as we go live again every Thursday. So you know what, when we're there, we'll answer all your questions, dynasty, all that good stuff. So cheers.
I feel like, cheers is right. I feel like before we get into the coaching carousel, like we said, we're going to briefly hit 3 guys. It's not going to be a super long podcast, but we think we'll keep it pretty entertaining. But there was one pretty big piece of news that came around weekend early this week, and that is the, I don't want to say like abrupt retiring, because there's nothing abrupt about a guy retiring when he plays for like 22 years or however many years he played for. But, people started talking about the possibility that Brady was going to retire after the Bucs lost to the Rams in a game they very easily could have won. And, it's funny because going into that game, I had not really thought about it very much. He had started to seem just kind of inevitable, kind of to me, like he was just going to, why stop? I mean, did you see the season the guy had? He did really, really well. It was not like, oh man, he got old overnight. He obviously could still play football if he wants to, but he has hung it up. I want to know your quick thoughts on this. And I want to know, just in a word, is he really done? What do you think?
I do think, yes, he's really done. Brady's not the type, I don't imagine, to be floating in and out and needing the media spotlight and all that. In fact, he was pretty pissed. It leaked to then take the spotlight away from championship weekend. He tried to say, oh no, this isn't going on. Like, let's, backtrack, and then eventually did ultimately retire. obviously Patriots fan, you're diehard. This is the guy I've been growing up watching my whole life. Like, it's just surreal. I don't know if he'll even officially sink in until we actually see him off, like week 1 hits and there's no Tom Brady on the field. That's when I think it's really going to hit. But there's no argument, in my opinion, who the GOAT is. Like, he is the unquestioned first in nearly every statistical category. We don't need to rally them off where you've probably already seen or heard them all at this point, but certainly most decorated playoff record. I think he's like tripled next closest in wins, something of that nature. It's just insane. Well,
it's not far from that. I mean, I think he ended with 35 playoff wins, which is
just incredible.
Pretty impressive.
Incredible.
I mean, I'm not going to argue that you can't make a cohesive argument about him being the GOAT as far as quarterback goes. You can look and say, I think this guy was more talented. You can make that argument, but you can't argue that he's the GOAT. There's no logical argument to it. So, I mean, he's lapped the field pretty much at least once.
Yeah.
I heard somebody make an argument that he's basically had 3 different Hall of Fame careers.
It's awesome. Legitimately 3. To go out leading the league in passing yardage, passing touchdowns, like just going out on top, other than, I guess, a Super Bowl would, of course, been officially going out on top, but he just had one last year. I mean,
he has 7.
He's got so many. He's got nothing left to prove, so I get it. It's his time, and I don't think, given all the family comments he's making, I don't think he's coming back. So, I'll take a nice swig here for Tommy.
But I'm going to say something. I'm going to say something about Brady, and I don't know how this will land with you. When we talked about earlier, we're about to talk about coaches, and people say, "Oh, coaches doesn't matter." Brady is obviously a great quarterback, a really driven guy. Like, I mean, I often wonder what would have happened if he had gone somewhere else, like, as say like a 4th round draft pick or a 5th round draft pick to another team. When you get drafted 4th or 5th round, like, you're not expected to necessarily be the guy. And I just wonder what would have happened to him. I mean, he's an example of somebody, this takes nothing away from his greatness. He's somebody that coaching helped immensely. I mean, Bill Belichick is, just like you said, Brady's the greatest quarterback ever. I'm very convinced Belichick's the best coach ever. And, I don't feel that way about Bruce Arians, by the way. I think that by the time Brady went to Tampa Bay, he was a different thing. And, it kind of risen to that next just level of, I don't know, consciousness or whatever it is, that he didn't need the greatest coach in the history of football anymore. But Brady is a guy, he goes somewhere else. His career could have been totally different. He could have been insignificant. People get swallowed up in this league because they end up in a bad situation or playing for a coach that doesn't click for them. That didn't happen for him, and he exceeded all expectations times like 100. So
absolutely,
it's up to him. And I mean, I didn't pull for the guy really in his career. I'll miss him definitely.
100%. I think we all will. Everybody that even rooted against Tom, it's like, all right, we're gonna all miss him and the greatness that we saw. And I think it is just so it sounds crazy to call him inspirational in a way, but yeah, I mean, going in as the 199th pick and doing what he did was insane. It is a great question. What if he did the 200th pick and he was on a different team? Would he have risen to the top? I imagine eventually at some point he wouldn't have
been
impact. Right.
He wouldn't have been this though.
No, the immediacy and especially, where it developed. And I guess that's the one thing that's negative to me. And it's really pissed me off, to be honest, this week is he writes this whole 6-page Instagram post and doesn't even mention New England once. No Belichick, no Kraft, and especially not even the fans. What the fuck was that? Like, I can't sit here and say I'll never, it tarnishes his legacy or anything. I mean, he kind of does in a way. They're like, what the fuck? Why are you the first people you thank are the Bucks and the Glazers and Arians? Like, to me, it was clearly calculated. I don't know why.
Everything he does is calculated.
Right.
It's not.
what eventually, like, get the fuck over the bad ending. It wasn't even that ugly of a divorce. I don't know. That pissed me off pretty significantly, how petty that type of exit was with not thanking the Pats after all that. And especially not even thinking, okay, if you don't want to, I heard a great caller on Boston Sports Radio, like, kind of comparing it to, you don't want to, thank your ex-wife after an ugly divorce. Okay. But then to not thank your kids, that your fans that have been loving you and still admire you and still were rooting for you, no matter where you went after the fact, that was kind of bogus. Like, at least say New England, where I was grown and raised, and that's the town that I became a legend. Like, not even a single sentence in his fucking entire thing. Like, he reshares a post by Kraft and says, "Love you, Pats Nation." I thought that was pretty bullshit. And maybe he has a big coming back ceremony or retirement. And I hope so. I hope to God he doesn't retire a fucking buck. But like, I don't know. I'm pretty pissed off about that. I still am. It happened on Monday, Tuesday. And I haven't gotten over that yet. I still love the guy, still love everything he did, but it definitely leaves a weird, ugly, just like unsettling taste in the mouth.
I will tell you this, just to kind of put a bow on this. I was John Elway, diehard John Elway fan for his entire career from the time I started watching football. So similar to you with Brady. And Brady played a little longer, but we probably started watching them. I became a huge Elway fan when I was like 7 or 8, and then watched him like for his entire career. Like he was football to me. And when he finally retired, and he did retire on top with back-to-back Super Bowls, it didn't quite sink in right away. And then when it did sink in, I was just kind of lost for a little while. Like I didn't even know what's my relationship with football. It really changed everything. It took me, fantasy actually is the thing that kept me excited about football in that kind of direct aftermath of when he retired, because so much of my love for football was wrapped up in my love for John Elway.
Yeah.
That when he was gone, it was just weird. The same thing happened to me with basketball when Larry Bird retired. And so I expect you're going to be wandering aimlessly for a little while, trying to pick up the pieces now that Brady's gone. I salute the guy. Amazing career. Made one of the best sports careers ever, if not the best sports career ever. I don't know. I'd have to really look into that, but hats off to the guy. Even though I pulled against him 90% of the time in his career, what an amazing, amazing career he had.
Yeah. In my and obviously I am a biased opinion, but I do think it is the greatest single sports career of all time, just given how important the quarterback is to the sport and how difficult it is to play at that level, and especially as long as he did it. I mean, you don't even see kickers or punters last to 44 in the NFL, never mind a quarterback. To do what he's done and still be doing it as well as he did on his way out, 7 Super Bowls in one of the hardest feats. He has more Super Bowls than any franchise. Like him personally has more Super Bowl rings than a single franchise in the entire NFL. Like to me, that's by far the greatest legacy of any sport, and I don't know that anybody can ever top that. We'll see.
So
I'm shocked.
I wouldn't be surprised if somebody could top it in the future, just because things are changing all the time. I mean, I'd be impressed, but I'm not like putting money on it. But yeah, it's probably the best sports career ever. I have to think about it a little more in depth. If I can come up with a counter argument, maybe I'll shoot it your way in a future show. Anyway, yeah, have a good whatever you're doing next, Tom. I'm sure you'll come up with something fun. All right, let's talk about coaching real quick. We got 3 that we said we're going to dive into and spend a little bit of time on. And who do we want to hit first, Wolf?
I'll go in the order of the impact I see these guys having on their franchises, and especially in terms of fantasy. I think Brian Daboll with the Giants is going to have the biggest impact, just given what we've seen in the Buffalo Bills these last couple years. So let's just talk about Brian Daboll real quick. Like, can he save Daniel Jones is the question that everyone's going to be asking. Is this guy even worth saving at this point, or do they just go after somebody new and start the whole thing fresh? And already Brian Daboll has come out and said, I think it's Daboll. That's how you say it. I should probably know the pronunciation before we start. It's Daboll, though. Speaking of his history, though, it is interesting because all the glitz and glamour of these last couple seasons with the Bills have been great. I mean, he has been lighting the league on fire. First in first downs last year. First in points. I'm looking at all the stats here. Like, I mean, there's really no arguing that he's done an incredible job these last couple of years. More first downs than any team. Second in percentage of drives ending in a score. Second total points. Third in both passing yards and scores. I mean, the offense was on fire last year, carrying over from the year before. You look at what the guy did, though, leading into his time with Buffalo. It was pretty hideous. He did not rank well as a play caller. So before that, in 2009 and 2010, he was with the Browns with Eric Mangini. Those teams ranked 29th and 31st in terms of total points scored. Not good. Not a good offensive output there. Somehow he still parlayed that into another offensive coordinator job in Miami. They just ranked 20th in points. So not really solid at all. And then he went to Kansas City. They ranked 32nd in points. So he was kind of shitty to be honest. As great of an offensive guru as he's been with the second and third most points these last couple of years, and then even the first couple of years with the Bills, 30th and 23rd in total points. So it really took a long time for him to get going. So it's one of those things like, should we judge him on his recent history? How much does that outweigh what his past was leading into this? And in my opinion, we should judge him because his offense really did evolve significantly over these last couple of years in terms of 4 wide receiver sets, running the most pass plays in neutral, 75% of the time running pass plays in neutral scripts, just really playing into his team's strengths. I think the guy is rightfully lauded like a strong offensive mind and potentially even guru after these last 2 years. I think he was instrumental in the development of Josh Allen. So I do think we should weigh those last couple of seasons more heavily than a checkered past. But I do want to emphasize this guy was not perfect by any stretch of the imagination coming into these last couple of years. With all that being said, let's look at Daniel Jones. What does he do well? Not a lot, but he can actually sneakily run. Average 6.2, 6.5, 4.8 yards per attempt, had like 80-yard touchdown just a couple seasons ago. Not bad. I don't think he's going to be the next Josh Allen by any means on the ground, but any little boost of that. I mean, we've seen, you don't need me to spout off all the rushing stats we've seen from Josh Allen, but just to emphasize it, 631, 8 touchdowns, 510, 9 touchdowns, 421, 8 touchdowns, 763, 6 touchdowns.
Okay. But rattling off Josh Allen's running stats when we're talking about a guy who's going to the Giants, is meaningless. That's like the assistant coach of, the Bulls in the 90s goes somewhere and then you rattle off Michael Jordan's stats. It's like, okay, but that's not where he's coaching anymore. He's not coaching Josh Allen. He's coaching Daniel Jones.
No, but what I get that. Of course, it's and then we'll talk about Nathaniel Hackett. Like Javonte Adams just had 2 of the most insane seasons we've ever seen. They don't have a Javonte Adams. He's the best receiver. I guess that's kind of a preface to the whole conversation of coaches. Is like we can talk about what these players have done in the past, but any good coach is molding to his ability. Like it's never going to be a apples and apples every single time. It's a direct translation, but he might call more running plays in general. Just 20 more run plays for Daniel Jones. That goes a long way for a quarterback. That's only what I'm saying. He's not going to run for 760 yards. He's not going to score 8 touchdowns on the ground. That's not happening. But if he gets to 405 compared to, 250 and 2, that's a huge leap for a quarterback. In my opinion. That's
true. I have a very hard time. Now I'm going to come off as extreme. I'm a glass half empty guy anyway, but I'm going to come off like that even more right now, which is just like I have a really hard time believing Brian Daboll or however we pronounce this guy's name, which we should have researched before the show, but we didn't. I have a really
Daboll.
That's what we're going with. And I mean, the personnel in the Giants is pretty bad. And I just have a really hard time imagining this guy is going to come in and fix this stuff and make the Giants like a competitive, respectable team, unless there's just an influx of talent that comes in with him. I don't know. I mean, look, the coach is important. You got to have players. Like what coaches win without players? Maybe Brian Flores, but we see where that got him.
Yeah, seriously. He did the job over anybody we're talking about right
now.
Yeah,
I'd way rather have him than any of these guys.
100%.
I don't know. We'll see. The Giants are in the rare kind of like group of teams, and there's a few of them. I wonder if you have some teams like this too, where I'm just not going to believe it until I see it with them. I think they're that bad. I think that their organization, the Jets, I feel the same way about them. The Jaguars, I feel the same way about them. There might be 1 or 2 more, but I'm not going to believe that they're good until I actually see them turn it around. I don't care who they pick up on the coaching end. I'm assuming this is like a 4-13, 5-12 team. What do you think?
And what I was going to end up eventually leading my whole point to is I think Daniel Jones sucks. I don't think
he's terrible.
I don't think there's any coach that's going to be good enough to save him. And I don't think they're going to fault Daboll if he doesn't turn this around. All I'm saying is
his receivers aren't good either, to be fair.
The thing is you look at Josh Allen's first couple of years in Buffalo, he looked like shit too. He had some glimpses. Certainly more hope was provided by Josh Allen his first 2 years than what we've seen from Daniel Jones so far. And I don't think it's going to end up working out for Daniel Jones. I'm not sitting here saying Daniel Jones is suddenly my number 1 target in fantasy, but he's not going to have much of an excuse because Joe Judge, I mean, the guy was fucking lining up and QB sneaking on 3rd and 15 on his own yard line. Like that was
one of the worst plays I've ever seen in my life.
I do think Dave, this is going to be a guy that we've seen lead the second most explosive offense in the league that can call plays to his players' strengths. He said, he already called Daniel Jones and said, what was your favorite things that you did at Duke? We're going back to basics. Your favorite 3 things you did. And yes, it seems obvious. That's what every coach should do. It's just
nice, but not everyone does do that. Not everyone does.
Joe Judge didn't do that. No,
a ton of people. Look, I believe this guy's going to be better than plenty of head coaches in the NFL. I really do. I'm tempering my expectations. I'm not expecting big things from really anybody in this offense.
As am I, because again, I think it comes down to the fact that I don't think Daniel Jones is good. I don't think he's even worth saving. I'd almost rather than kick Daniel Jones to the curb and start fresh and give Daboll like a new guy. But he said, I love him. I want to go with it. He's also got Mike Kafka coming in at QB coach. He's been Pat Mahomes' QB coach the last 4 years. Obviously, I'm not saying
Pat Mahomes' stats. Come on.
I'm not comparing those two. I'm not saying he's going to suddenly have a resurrection like Pat Mahomes has. But he's surrounded by the right minds and the right coaches. If Daniel Jones has any type of hope, it would be these coaches have. If he has any type of talent, these are the guys that are going to squeeze it from him. Again, I don't think he does. I think he's going to suck, and it's not going to work out. But this is the best setup. And I do disagree. I think his receivers really aren't that bad. Galladay, yes, he had a horrible year. But terrible. Just a few seasons ago, he was an alpha with the Detroit fucking Lions. Sterling Shepard's a great slot receiver, in my opinion, a very solid chain mover. And we saw Kadarius Toney have really solid glimpses, 189-yard games. Yeah, they could probably stand to add another playmaker, but you stir in Saquon Barkley, who we're going to talk about next. I think we just move on to him now. I don't think the weapons cabinet is that bad.
Listen. But before, because I find arguments like this even more interesting than the coaching one, which is we talk about the Giants wide receivers. You're saying they're pretty good. And you listed off 3 guys that do have talent. You're right about that. What receiving cores are they better than?
The Lions, for one.
Okay. All right. Would you rather have Amon-Ra St. Brown than any of those receivers? I probably
That's up for debate. I mean, St. Brown certainly showed more at the end of the year than any of those guys did, but I don't think so. I mean, Galladay, I don't know.
Galladay was terrible.
Horrendous. He didn't score a touchdown after getting paid
terrible.
$20 million.
I mean, they're better than the Bears wide receivers. I'll give you that.
I'd have to pull up a list of teams.
Yeah, I know. But I'm just saying there's not that many teams that have, I think, worse receiving cores than them.
Probably. And again, the receivers won't matter at the end of the day if the quarterback doesn't matter. And Eagles horrendous. Yeah. So I bet you we pulled up a list. There's I bet you we could go 10 teams that are the Giants have better receivers, and which again is a.
We should do that. By the way, that should be a game that we play on the show. We just say over under. You have to go back and forth and name a number of teams, and then you're like, I think I can name 10 teams that have worse receivers than the Giants, and I'll be like, name those teams.
Name them now.
Then you have to.
I'd have to pull up the list of teams, but I like that. It's a good concept. Right. But again, I don't think Daniel Jones is going to end up proving worth saving. No. I'm just wanting to highlight that these are the guys, if he's going to be saved, these are the guys to do it. I think Daboll, Mike Kafka, those are the guys you want around you. I do think he needs a better line. I'd love to see them aggress that very aggressively this year, and we'll see what they do. Certainly new GM's not going to hurt either. Getting Gettleman the hell out of there as well. How will Saquon fare? I think that's another fair question. And if his offense takes even a mild step forward and gives him more scoring opportunities, I could see it going really well. And yes, the Bills, we look at Josh Allen and it should be, okay, that's the highlight here, right? And look at those backfields of the Bills, and they were atrocious. Well, we talked about, obviously Singletary and the way he ended the year. The number 2 running back in fantasy from week 10 on was absolutely going berserk, and that was nice to see. But you go back even further, even in the shitty years of Brian Daboll, we had the biggest breakout guy of all time. There's one running back who had one good year and did nothing else after, and it was under Brian Daboll. Could you guess who it is?
What was
it? Was with the Browns. I'll give you that hint.
Peyton Hillis.
Yeah, Peyton Hillis, exactly. Yeah. Madden cover boy. That was under Brian Daboll. So, that's encouraging that he used a workhorse in that season. Then he goes on over to Miami, and Reggie Bush had his only 1,000-yard rushing season under Brian Daboll, 6 touchdowns in addition to another 300 yards through the air. Solid usage. Right after that, Jamal Charles, 1,500 yards On the ground, 230 receiving yards. And again, like it's Jamal Charles. He's going to succeed under anybody. I get that. But like Peyton Hillis, Reggie Bush with one of his career high seasons, and Jamal Charles, he did use running backs to a pretty solid level and certainly as pass catchers. So I do think that's a reason to be a little bit optimistic no matter how this all goes. Those were shitty offenses that, again, 32nd, 29th, and 31st in points. And running backs all had top 12 running back seasons inside that offense fantasy-wise. I do think there's reason to be optimistic should Saquon stay healthy. A big if, because he hasn't stayed healthy in 4 straight years. But we saw a little bit of juice towards the end of the season. I think Saquon could fare well in this offense. We will see. Do you think I'm nuts? Are you done with Saquon completely?
Yeah, I've been done with Saquon. I've been done with him for 2 years at least.
I think he's going to be, no matter what happens here, I do think Saquon, I have a lot of hope. Again, Peyton Hillis can fucking succeed in this offense. You're telling me Saquon can't succeed in this offense?
It's apples and oranges. I mean, it's like it's completely different personnel. I don't know why the hell Peyton Hillis had a good season.
Colt McCoy at quarterback. I mean, no, Daniel Jones isn't worse than his backup is Colt McCoy. Actually, now that you think about it,
I mean, they actually
maybe they turned it over. I almost think Colt McCoy.
Look, I think Saquon Barkley is one of the most talented running backs I've ever seen in my life. Okay, and I'm still I have zero faith. I mean, this is just me repeating that I will not believe anything positive about the Giants until I see it with my own eyes repeatedly. Until then, I don't give a shit. I'm just I'm not, you will not get me to say yeah, I think that the Giants are going to have this explosive offense. I mean, Barkley, who knows if he can even stay healthy, but that guy, I mean, that was just he had no chance last year. He had no chance the year before. We'll see if something changes. Obviously he's talented. But, I mean, the shelf life of a running back is not very long. And so we'll see what happens. I don't know.
That's what I'm saying, though. I think Daboll gives him a chance. If he gave Peyton fucking Hillis a chance, I think Saquon Barkley is going to be in the best situation he's been in since he had Pat Shurmur when he was a rookie and had a ridiculous season. 78 targets went to Hillis. I could see another 100-plus target season coming for Saquon, which has been a long time. He deserves it. I think he'll use Saquon this is a guy that plays to his team's strengths. And if you have any eyeballs, Saquon is the player you need to build this offense around. Last but not least, is there a Diggs here? We obviously saw Diggs. No, I agree. There's no Diggs here as of right now. I don't think Galladay. I think Galladay is the biggest, fakest alpha of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had that 1 or 2 mirage seasons where the more I think about it, I think Matthew Stafford just makes fantasy monsters. I think that's part of it. Obviously Calvin Johnson and then Cooper Kupp both set records with Matthew Stafford, but he's that good that even Kenny Galladay, who's the fakest alpha of all time, had a wide receiver 1 season. I think we
should also do a show later talking about the fakest alphas of all time.
Yeah, Kenny Galladay might be the number one.
He's at least on the list.
He's top 5 for sure. Diggs is a clear alpha. I don't think this team has a clear alpha right now. But a Cole Beasley, 967 and 5 touchdowns. Maybe Shepard, he had it leading up to last year. 6 straight games as a top 20 wide receiver, and then obviously the injuries and all that caught up. I think Kadarius Toney, such an explosive threat. You also look, though, then it's Gabe Davis is such an explosive threat, but it took half the year for him to get it break out, and it took, Emmanuel Sanders' injury for him to break out. Is Daboll that great at recognizing what he has and putting him on the field? I don't know. It's still a mixed bag for me. I do think it's certainly more hopeful than Joe Judge. This is a 1,001% upgrade. I don't know. At the end of the day, it really all hinges on the quarterback. Saquon can succeed no matter what, but if Daniel Jones doesn't take a step forward, these receivers won't matter anyways. It will remind me with Josh Allen's early years when he was sucking. Zay Jones had 642 yards and 7 touchdowns. That's the kind of stats I'm expecting from these receivers. So I'm not going in on the receivers yet. I do think Daniel Jones is a last round flyer, just in the off chance that maybe he runs a bit more. But I do think Saquon, this does bump him up probably 5 or 6 spots on my overall big board, because I think this offense, even if it's not a huge offensive explosion, will be 100% better than what it was last year, because it has nowhere to go but drastically up. And Daboll is a proven mind, especially these last couple of years. I'm very intrigued to see what he does.
All right. We're half an hour into this podcast. I said to my wife, I was like, oh, we're just doing 2 or 3 coaches. This is going to be fast. It's going to be half an hour. Half an hour in. This is going to end up being the longest podcast.
Well, we ended up talking about Brady for 15 minutes.
Yeah, it was 10 minutes. We just did 20 on the Giants coach. I'm just putting that out there. Like, Daboll, he should, give us a tweet or something like that, because that's more time than anybody's going to talk about you outside of New York all year. All right. What's the next team we're going to hit?
What's it? Your Broncos, the Denver Broncos.
Okay. But we're going to preface this by saying pieces are in motion right now. We don't know who's going to be on the Broncos next year. The cap, as far as what we think Nathaniel Hackett is going to do in Denver, is going to be drastically different with the personnel he has now, which is not bad, by the way. Or if he had Aaron Rodgers and Javonte Adams all of a sudden thrown in, or either one of them or both of them thrown in, obviously the ceiling changes quite a bit. So a lot of stuff up in the air. Hackett he's been around. He's a quarterbacks guy. I mean, basically he's been in charge of a lot of pretty well-known and some lesser-known quarterbacks. One of my favorites that he really helped rise to prominence was Blake Bortles.
Exactly.
Guy had some of his best seasons. Well, not some of his best
seasons.
He had his only good football under this guy, is really what I should be saying. And then the last 3 years, he's been obviously with the Packers and Aaron Rodgers. I know Rodgers does not get it done often when he needs to. You seen Rodgers' touchdowns and interceptions the last 3 years? Have you looked at that? 111 touchdowns, 13 picks.
Incredible.
That's ridiculous, man. That's like 37-4 average.
Yeah.
Over 3 years. I'm not going to give Hackett all the credit for that, but I mean, it's pretty good.
Yeah. And that's so. What I wanted to talk about him, you kind of hinted at Rodgers was going to succeed with whoever's calling the plays. I don't think Hackett was even calling the plays. So I don't want to put too much stock in the last 3 years with the Packers. Of course, he probably learned things from Rodgers and learned things from LaFleur, who I do think is a very solid coach. That never hurts, but he wasn't calling the plays. So I'm not looking at Rodgers' last 2 MVP campaigns like Nathaniel Hackett has led the charge. No, I don't expect that.
Rattle off Rodgers' stats.
That being said, he had a Jaguars team with Blake Bortles that ranked 5th in the NFL in points like that. And he was the play caller because Doug Marrone was the head coach. So Hackett had everything to do with that offense. That's impressive in its own self. He had a couple solid seasons with Bortles, 3,905 yards, 23 TDs. That's not bad from Blake Bortles. And that, before the gaudy passing stats were big. We had Kyle Orton in 12 games go 3,018 and 18 touchdowns. He was on pace for
Orton.
Yeah, remember him? I mean,
I do.
I don't think he got enough credit. He was actually a pretty solid, he's kind of like Ryan Fitzpatrick, in my opinion. Like when he was out there, he's going to give you a game every single time. He never really ended up winning anything too crazy. And you never were too scared of him, but you always knew you had to fight when you were facing Kyle Orton. I don't know. Maybe that was after
you might be romanticizing Kyle Orton just a little bit.
I liked Kyle Orton. I thought him, Brandon Lloyd, they had a nice, interesting connection for a while wherever he went. But he had a solid season, 18 touchdowns and 3,018 yards in just 12 games. So over 4,025 pace there. So with Orton and Bortles having solid seasons, the guy knows how to coordinate pretty solid passing attacks. So I do think this is an offense, relies on play action, a lot of deep shots, and then, attacking underneath after you've established those. You think of all the chunk plays we see from Rodgers to Adams. They really like to get those big 20, 25-yard plays and even bigger plays than that by really stretching you out and using that play action to absolute perfection. So I do think it will be a solid passing attack for whoever does enter it. Maybe, God forbid, maybe Rodgers does go there. Obviously, that's going to be a solid offense if Rodgers is there, no matter where he goes, but especially if he is aligned with his coordinator. I don't think they're starting quarterback. I don't think it's going to be Bridgewater. I don't think it's going to be Locke. So whoever it is, it's going to be intriguing nonetheless. So I think this is a good spot for a quarterback if he can milk solid seasons out of Orton and Bortles. I do think Hackett's going to set whoever is his signal caller up for success. I did text you earlier. Did you ever figure out why you should know Nathaniel Hackett? It's going to piss you off when I remind you of it.
So there are 2 possible things that I thought you might be referring to. One is just his association with Blake Bortles.
Yes.
And the other one, I feel like he was maybe involved in that CJ Spiller run until you puke scheme.
That came out of his mouth. We're going to feed CJ Spiller the ball until he pukes. And suddenly Matt takes him second overall and he busts completely.
So that draft, I remember I really wanted Spiller because, and I remember I could have taken Jamal Charles, and this is like peak Cha-Cha. Remember how pissed Jimmy used to get when we'd call him Cha-Cha? It just really bothered him. It really bothered him for some reason.
I love it.
It was peak Cha-Cha. And I had 3 teams, and I had already taken Charles on my other 2 teams. And I was like, I got to spread it around a little bit. I can't take Charles. And I was like, I believe in Spiller. And it was, just a terrible decision. I may have won that league anyway, actually, even despite CJ Spiller, because that was also the year I took Josh Gordon.
No, man, I think Manny won that year because
really?
he knocked me out because he had Cha-Cha, who had 4 touchdowns against the.
You might be right about that. You might be right about that, actually. But I do think I got Josh Gordon, and
if you had Jamal Charles, you did have Josh Gordon. I remember that league that year. But if you had Jamal Charles, you would have won it.
Oh, I would have won easily, right? But instead I had CJ Spiller, right?
But you had CJ Spiller till he puked, and he just puked right on himself.
He just vomited like 4 carries into the first game, and that was it.
He puked early and then got pulled out quite often.
Right.
So speaking of that, that makes it seem like doom for Javonte Williams, right?
No,
but no. It actually is a pretty solid track record for Hackett and his running backs, especially as receivers. So there's a plus and a minus to Hackett with his running game. And one, Javonte Williams, I think, is scheme transcendent. He's going to be great no matter what happens, and especially if Melvin Gordon leaves. The concern, let's start with the negatives, get those out of the way, is Hackett does typically run a committee. Whether it was Fred Jackson and your puke man, CJ Spiller, Fred Jackson and Anthony Dixon, then Yeldon and Ivory. Fournette was the one workhorse he had, 268 carries and 36 catches that one year with the Jags. But he went back to a committee because Fournette got hurt and just kind of sucked. Then we saw Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. Like Jones, yes, a top 10 running back or top 5 running back for 2 of those 3 seasons. But he still was involved in intermix in a committee. So I don't think we're going to see 400 touch Javonte Williams anytime soon. But that being said, Hackett has loved using his running backs in the passing game. In 6 of his 8 seasons calling plays or being the offensive coordinator, 6 of them, his running backs have ranked top 10 in targets and target share. There's only been 2 seasons where they haven't been up there. All of them been over 100 targets to the running back position, multiple times over 133 targets to the running back position. So he can kind of emerge as that third down back, that guy that had the situation on lock last year. By the end of the season, he is a solid pass catcher. I know in college you kind of split time with Michael Carter, who's also a great, probably even a better pass catcher. But Javonte Williams is going to see some targets, and we saw what he can do when he gets in space. Certainly when he gets in any type of situation with breaking contact and whatnot, but especially when he's in space. 43 catches on 53 targets last year, 3 touchdowns. I mean, the guy is a great receiver and deadly in that role, and I do think Hackett is going to pepper him with looks. So I really like what this hire does for Javonte Williams. Now, obviously, is there a Devontae Adams endeavor? No, we know that. But again, I do want to kind of de-emphasize those 3 seasons because it was LaFleur calling the plays. Yes, he used the offensive coordinator Hackett in name, but it was really LaFleur calling plays. It was really Rodgers probably calling the plays at the end of the day. So I don't want to overemphasize it, but we did just see 2 historic seasons from Davante Adams, just an absolute smattering and peppering of targets there with, what was it last year? Hold on, I'm pulling it up right here.
169 targets.
Yeah, 123 catches, 1,553 yards, 11 touchdowns. In only 14 games, 18 touchdowns, 1,374 yards, and 115 on 149 targets. I mean, insane usage for the alpha wide receiver 1. I don't think either Jeudy or Sutton are even close in the same stratosphere, in the same conversation as Adams. But let's say Rodgers goes there and Adams doesn't follow. I wouldn't be shocked if one of those guys, my money would probably be on Sutton. I think everybody loves Jeudy. I don't know that Jeudy hasn't really shown anything through his 2 seasons so far. He'll have these couple of routes that you can cut the highlight clip, damn, he just broke that dude's ankles, and that was the smoothest thing. And it's damn, he should be just wide open in every play, right? But he isn't. I don't know. I think Judy's one of the more overrated players in the league, to be honest, right now. That being said, I think Sutton would kind of emerge as the Adams-like player if it ends up being Rodgers there and all that stuff. A lot of ifs. I don't think there is an Adams by any means. And maybe Adams and Rodgers have already talked. We're going to go together wherever we go. So maybe they both end up there. And then you do have a Davante Adams in Denver. I think it would just be wheels up. Same thing we've seen all through the career of these two. But at the end of the day, other than the Adams seasons, we haven't really had too many target hogs. In fact, we don't have any other 1,000-yard receivers under Nathaniel Hackett, other than Davante Adams, the best receiver, one of the best receivers of all time, and certainly the best receiver in the game right now, in my opinion. So,
you think so? I was just gonna. How many people do you think are in the same category as Adams? I don't think he's the best receiver in the NFL.
I would say there's not too many, in my opinion. I mean, because
I think there's like 4 or 5 guys.
There's like obviously like Tyreek Hill, such a game wrecker and game breaker. I don't know who do you put in that conversation?
Cooper Kupp.
I mean, yeah, Cooper Kupp. Like, sure.
And I would put Debo and maybe Jamar Chase, although I need to see a little more consistency. But
I think Chase is actually the one.
Those are the 5 guys that I think are the best 5 wide receivers in the NFL.
Justin Jefferson, I think, is
Jefferson might be on the end of that pile too. But I mean,
he's right in there. Yeah.
I mean, it's hard for me to say anybody's better than Cooper Kupp.
I think Jamar Chase
just because like Cooper Kupp is open by 6 yards every single time he goes out, even if the other team knows he's getting the ball and are like double or triple teaming, he's still wide open. Doesn't matter. And so you got to like at least throw some respect that way.
And I love watching Cooper Kupp like your whole linebackers. Like as much as after the catch and deep, everything the guy does is great. But like the fact that he'll just run in blindside linebackers, fucking love it. Like,
he's great.
That might be my favorite.
So I put him, Davante, in no particular order. Debo Samuel, Jamar Chase, Jefferson, maybe in that same group, and for Tyreek Hill. I mean, those are the guys.
Debo's an interesting name because he's more like just an offensive weapon, right? Because he's in the backfield and like that. Like he's as a pure wide receiver, he's obviously dangerous and deadly. But like,
I mean, where did he finish in fantasy wide receiving points?
Right.
Where did he finish? He was like 3rd.
If you took away his rushing stats, I mean, he was 3rd in fantasy. But if you took away the rushing stats,
right, that's true. That's not all. That's not all receiving. You're right.
It's not all.
Maybe Debo doesn't belong as high as him.
I think Jefferson, Chase, like some of those names you tossed out there, above Debo as a pure just receiver, as a weapon. Obviously, Debo might be my favorite fucking player in the league at this point. The way he's
so fun to watch. I'm definitely trying to draft that guy in all my lives.
I know. I think I tweeted a couple weeks ago, like Debo deserves 1st round consideration, and people are like,
oh yeah. No, you're not an idiot. Are you kidding me?
No, Debo is unbelievable. We got off track here. Either way, none of those guys, Jeudy, Sutton, they're not in that conversation. They never will be in that conversation. So no, there's not a Davante Adams in Denver. But if Rodgers does go there, one of those guys in my pick would be Sutton, especially another year removed from the ACL injury. I could see Sutton having a crazy year. I think everybody would go all in on Jeudy. I would probably be in on Sutton. I've always kind of been more of a Sutton guy than a Jeudy guy myself. So either way, Hackett, just kind of like sum it all up. Obviously, he's been around some great minds, some great quarterbacks, and had great success even when he's not with good guys like Bortles. Milked the best possible season out of some of these guys, and really does like using his running backs in creative ways. So I think it's going to be a boon for Javonte Williams. I think whoever is at quarterback is going to be set up for some quality success. And they do have it, even though I just kind of shit on Jeudy and Sutton. Those are that's a pretty solid tandem compared to a lot of teams in the league. So whoever is throwing them the rock, I do think is going to have a very solid setup between these weapons. I'm very intrigued to see what the Broncos do at quarterback because this offense could take it to another level this year. I'm really excited to see.
All right. Do we got anything to say about the Bears?
So yeah, just to kind of cross one last team off this list of course. So we got Matt Eberfellis, however you say it, from the Colts, which I think is a solid hire, a good defensive-minded guy. The team led the league in defensive turnovers. I like the hire for the Bears, other than the fact that you have this young quarterback that you really need to groom and get ready in Justin Fields. I thought they were going to go the offensive type of route to have that happen. They didn't, but I actually don't hate who they went with, which is Luke Getsy, the Packers quarterback coach. We just talked about these Packers. He did obviously a great job with Rodgers. And obviously, again, we keep mentioning Rodgers had these great years. Rodgers was going to have good years no matter who was there. But there was a little bit of a dip before LaFleur where he was having a couple dud seasons. And then they bring in Getzy these last 2 years where he had the MVP quality seasons and he just lit it up. And I'm not saying Getzy is responsible for Rodgers blowing up. But Rodgers spoke glowingly of him. He's very well regarded in quarterbacks, just in NFL circles, as a kind of a quote unquote QB whisperer. The only time he's called plays, though, was at the collegiate level, Mississippi State in 2018. So we don't really have much of a track record to go off of. But what we do have there was one of the top rushing offenses in the entire collegiate. They averaged nearly 230 rush yards per game. And a lot of that came from their quarterback. I don't even know who he is. His name's Nick Fitzgerald. I don't know a thing about him. He passed for 1,767 yards and 16 touchdowns. Not very good, but he also ran for 1,100 yards, 1,121 yards, and 13 touchdowns on the ground. They designed a ton of unique concepts, bootlegs, all that stuff that is what you want to see from Justin Fields. What we saw down the stretch when he was a top 10 quarterback in fantasy for the last 5 weeks, when they finally decided this guy is mobile, let's get him moving outside the pocket, let's give him some designed runs. That's what we've seen Luke Getsy do with his mobile quarterbacks at the collegiate level. I don't know if he'll do it at the pros level. We can't just say it's apples and it's automatically going to translate, but we've seen him do that before. I imagine that's part of why he was hired, because he knows how to use mobile quarterbacks. We saw that get misused for half a year. When they finally did it the right way, we saw Justin Fields finally take off the way we thought he would all year. So I do think this is a good, solid hire for Justin Fields. They did like to attack it deep at Mississippi State. They didn't have a prolific passing offense at all, but they did do a lot of solid rollouts and then just zip the ball down the field. So good news for Darnell Mooney potentially in that sense. I really do like Mooney a lot. I think he is completely overlooked right now, especially with Robinson leaving. Not that Robinson did nothing last year, but it's just a mouth that you're not going to have to worry about at all. So I think this is a very solid hire for Justin Fields. I can't pretend to know much else more about this guy because he doesn't have a play calling resume at the NFL level at all. But I do think he's going to play into Justin Fields' strength, and that's why he was like, as soon as the Bears hired, it was immediate. Like, we want Getzy. A lot of teams were calling his name and trying to get them for the offensive coordinator. So he doesn't have a resume, but the fact that he was as coveted as he was, and the Bears were like, we have to go get this guy no matter what, tells me they know he's going to play into Justin Fields' strength well.
You remember when, we've been doing this podcast for a pretty long time. I don't mean this one specifically this week. I just mean the Fantasy Fullback Dive. We've been doing this together for like 5 years at least at this point. Remember we had the guy on, he was the big Oregon Ducks guy.
What was his name?
And
Fisher.
Fisher. We had him on twice because the first time the recording messed up. So we actually had to do the entire podcast again. So we actually ran that shit back. And I just remember, I mean, he was very knowledgeable about Oregon and stuff like that. But I remember the big thing we were pumping up was Matt Nagy. Yep. And we were just like, oh, this guy's going to blow your mind.
It was Nagy, but it was even deeper than that. It was like the quarterback's coach that Nagy brought in was the Ducks' head coach.
Right.
So it wasn't even just Nagy.
No. There was a lot to love about what was going to happen with the Bears in the next few years.
Well, and you know what's crazy, Nat, is Mitch Trubisky ended up winning 11 of his 14 starts.
I know.
I honestly, I don't.
Do you think he's better than people have given him credit?
I think Trubisky is like sneaky good, but I think Nagy had a really solid start. When we did that big interview and stuff, it looked like we were kind of right because Nagy.
Oh yeah, we were
early on. He got Coach of the Year. He was Coach of the Year, and we're like, wow, Charles Fisher really came through for our
Charles
podcast.
Fisher, that was his
Charles
name,
Fisher, Chucky Fisher,
friend of the podcast.
Fishduck.com was the site.
Yeah, Fishduck.
Fishduck. Yeah. Oh man, Charles Fisher, good stuff. Good old times. But I honestly don't think Trubisky has gotten a fair shake. You know what I'd like to see?
What's that?
Is Trubisky, I'm calling it now. He's a free agent this year. He's going to go to the Giants because he was with Daboll last year on the Bills as their backup quarterback. He's going to go. He's going to beat out Daniel Jones for the starting job, and Trubisky's going to have himself a year. I'm calling it now.
Okay. All right.
Trubisky is going to go to the Giants, and he's going to have a decent year. When I say a year, it's pretty grounded in that sense, but he's going to be, I think he's going to be better than Daniel Jones. I don't think Trubisky's gotten a fair shake yet. I think he's going to go with Daboll, and he's going to end up kind of resurrecting himself with the Giants. Right, you heard it here first. Imagine that happens.
I got a question for you before we get out of here. What do you think about Jimmy G's future?
I think it's a great talk. That's something I wanted to discuss.
I mean, we can talk about it on another show because you talk about it. I don't think Trubisky's gotten a fair shake. He won X out of however many games. I mean, Jimmy G leaves plenty to be desired, but that dude wins football games.
That's all he does.
He really does. He wins football games, and it's like everyone talks about him like he's this joke. I'm like, hey, he's this joke that wins like 70% of the games he started over like 4 years. It's not like a small sample size anymore. Like the guy is a winner. So
it'll be interesting to see because he has been with, obviously the Pats, and then with Shanahan, two of the higher regarded coaches, like Belichick and Shanahan. So it will be interesting to see, like, if he goes, he will probably go and start somewhere. I mean, let's say he goes to the football team or the Commanders.
The Commanders.
As of what, 2 days ago?
Yeah,
the Commanders. He goes to the Commies. Let's say he goes there. He's got some weapons. He's got an a head coach that doesn't have quite the track record there, though. I mean, I think
one of the worst owners also in sports.
Oh yeah, just despicable human.
Yeah.
I think Jimmy G, like you said, it's so hard to quantify because it never really looks pretty. But in that same breath, like he might throw for 180 yards, but when it's the clutch last couple drives of the game, that's when they're coming, and that's when he's delivering the ball where it needs to go. He's overcoming whatever shitty throws he's made earlier in the game, and he just gets it done in the clutch time. And there is something to be said for that. It's unquantifiable, this type of quote unquote clutch gene. But Jimmy G has proven to have that. Like he typically, I guess, coming off this last loss, I guess it's like not the right time to say he's a clutch gene.
It's not the right time because like he had a lousy end of the game. But I mean, you know who else had a lousy end of the game? Mahomes had a really lousy end of the game. Do you see the discrepancy between his first half QBR and his second half?
Right.
Something like that. It was like 95 and then like -1 in the second half or something like that. It's like, I know Mahomes and Jimmy G, not the same thing, but it's like, yeah, I mean, what do you, I kind of don't think it's anything bigger than, he didn't really finish the game well.
Right. Right.
Stafford didn't start the game well. So I don't know. I think I like Jimmy G more than most people do.
Where would you like to see him? I like Jimmy. Obviously, I like Jimmy G too. Where do you want to see him end up?
I definitely want him to be a starter somewhere. I mean, if they're not going to keep him in San Francisco, and to me, it's not a preordained thing that you would definitely want to get rid of him in San Francisco, although it does seem to be like that's where it's going.
He wants to get out of there too.
Well, if he wants, then okay, then it's time. Then I guess I wouldn't mind seeing him go to like Pittsburgh. That could be interesting.
That could be intriguing. Although that line, I
don't know. I mean, I'm just trying to think of teams that are not walking. Like, I don't want to see him go to Jacksonville or something like that. Or, I mean, not that he would. They have Trevor Lawrence. He wouldn't, but I mean, I don't want him to go somewhere where it's like, hey, here you go. This is the end of your career. Just because, like, go to the Jets. Like, I don't want to see that happen.
No, he wouldn't. Again, those are guys. So these are the teams I could see making sense. Panthers, the Commanders, the Broncos, if they don't go with Rodgers, the Texans, the Steelers, and the Buccaneers. They've all of been linked to him too.
What if Seattle moved off Russell Wilson? I could see him maybe going there.
Could go there too. Yeah, that would be a really. He's been in that division for a long time now. That could be an intriguing fit if they do move on from Russ.
So I don't know. These are stories that I'm looking forward to discussing. Obviously, it's a long off season. But that's one of the things I've been thinking about.
I think whoever's the quarterback for all those teams I just rattled off, again, Panthers, Commanders, Broncos, Texans, Steelers, Buccaneers, in addition to where does Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, like where do all those players fit in? Like that's obvious. Quarterback is, again, the only thing that really matters in the NFL. Let's be real. I shouldn't say the only thing, but you know what I mean. Like you don't have
I'm going to say it's the thing that everything starts from.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's like you need other stuff, but it's like the foundation of everything kind of.
Exactly. You don't have that. You really we're not I was talking about this with someone at work today, actually. Like, yeah, we used to have like the Dilfers, those random seasons, like Rex Grossman, where the defense could kind of lug somebody to the Super Bowl. But the way the penalties work nowadays, that just doesn't, you cannot win on the back of a defense anymore. I don't think. I think you have to have at least a Jimmy G level of quarterback to make it to a Super Bowl nowadays. It will be really intriguing to see what happens with all those teams again: the Panthers, Commanders, the Broncos, the Texans, Steelers, Bucks, Saints. I mean, who's going to be their quarterback? Like, it will be very fascinating to see how this all ends up for sure.
If you could have one quarterback for the next 10 years, who are you taking right now?
Joe Burrow.
Yeah, me too.
Mahomes. I think.
Well, to me, I thought you were going to say Mahomes, and then I was going to counter with Burrow. I think Burrow's probably. I mean, I don't know, man. They're the same age, so it's tough.
Funny that my gut reaction without thinking was Burrow, and then I'm like, wait, what's Pat Mahomes, right? But I don't know. Something about Burrow's nuts. Like
Burrow beat Mahomes twice this year.
I know he did. It being down by multiple scores, and he beat him.
And
twice.
he's just a cool character.
I love him. The cigar.
I know, man. Gotta love Joe Burrow.
Yeah. Like that's part of it too, right? It's like if I could pick somebody I have to root for him, I'd rather.
I would way rather hang out with Burrow.
I'd rather hang out with him. I want him to be my. Yeah, I guess it's like sheer talent wise, Mahomes is the best player in the league. I know he
probably
turned it all that stuff. It wasn't his best finest hours last weekend. So in the pure football sense, Mahomes is the guy that if I want to win the next 10 years, I want to be Mahomes. But as a fan, who do I want to root for? Who do I think is not really that far off and clearly just knocked him off? Like Burrow is right there. I mean, the guy has nuts.
Burrow seems like a really good hang, and also with Mahomes, you got the Jackson Mahomes and Brittany Matthews. I'm not a huge fan of.
Baggage, the worst of baggage.
Right. So and Burrow just he's just sitting there smoking his cigars and just seems like a kind of a badass, right?
Yeah.
Had probably the best college season anybody's ever had.
Yep.
Like, I don't know. He's the real. I mean, and he's tough as shit too. Like,
I know.
I mean, he had that terrible injury last year. He got the shit sacked out of him last year and this year. Do you remember that game? He it's like, I don't know if he broke his thumb, but like or his pinky or something. He did something really bad to his hand, and it was like it wasn't like he was just complaining. It was like you could see it at like a right angle, and he's like on the sidelines, just kind of gritting his teeth, throwing the ball anyway. It's like if that was Aaron Rodgers, like that would have been like a 3-page spread in the Sunday thing about like, oh, my finger hurts, and then this guy's he's hardcore, man.
I know.
I love him.
Yeah, I love him too. I really do too. I'm pulling. It was tough. I hate to say this. I know we're not even on Super Bowl week yet. We'll be talking about. I can't wait. Stafford a lot too. I love Cup, so it's like I really don't mind whoever wins this game, and I hate that. Like
I hate that too. I genuinely. This is gonna make me sound like such a dipshit. I genuinely will be happy for whichever guy wins.
I really feel the same way, and I hate saying that.
How could I really? I don't have anything bad to say about either guy.
No, I want Stafford to have that form because he's just had such a tough hand, in Detroit for as long as he's been. And now
we talk about this coaching matter.
Super Bowl, like it's fucking awesome for him. But then it's Burrow's story. If I had to pick one, I'd rather see the Bengals win. I think. What about you?
I mean, there's no way I can answer this question without hedging completely because my instinct is, I guess I'm pulling for the Rams. I mean, I had Stafford and I had Cup on my fantasy team all year. So, I mean, I was pulling for these guys. Like, I'm like, what is this? All right, fantasy. That's what we do. Yes. But I'm a huge Joe Burrow fan. I've been pulling for this guy ever since he's been in the league. I'm a big believer. I like everything about him. Love T. Higgins. Love Jamar Chase. Maybe just the fact that I don't like Joe Mixon maybe will make me pull for the Rams just a tiny bit.
Joe Mixon's your deciding factor.
Well, I mean, there's nothing not to like about these teams. I mean, I'm a big Von Miller fan.
It's got to be the most likable Super Bowl of all time. There's always a team I don't want to see win, and I guess
it's usually the Patriots. It's usually that team.
It's usually the Patriots, right? Exactly. Or it's I don't want to see Mahomes get another type of thing, and he's not there this year. So whether it's Stafford, whether it's Burrow, I don't know. I like them both. I hate to say that as a fan.
No, I do too. We're gonna talk. We'll talk about this more the next time we do a pod.
Absolutely.
All right, we got a couple comments. 909 Orbit says my Saints want to speak with the enemy. Okay.
I don't know why Bieniemy doesn't get more. Every year, it's like why isn't Bieniemy getting interviews and he never does? So something's up there. Maybe it is a fucking racist league. I don't know, but
maybe it might be.
If I'm you, Orbit, I would love to see Bieniemy become your next coach because otherwise the Saints are in a dog shit situation.
Yeah. Dave says Wolf and Truth in the house. That's right, man.
What up, David? Good to see you.
Toon says tune in and live from the hospital with the newest Wolf. Congratulations, by the way. Having some complications, but he's making moves and will be ready for the preseason. I hope they are minor complications, Tunes. I'm sorry there's any going on. I got a couple of those little wolves myself, and so I know how important that is and how much of your attention that's going to require for the rest of your life. But hopefully hopefully the little wolf is doing better and be ready far before the preseason, I hope.
Absolutely. To his best wishes, prayers up. Hopefully, congratulations indeed as well. But, cheers to a speedy recovery and everything that you're dealing with right now.
And Chris Jason, Bill O'Brien to New England, prayers.
Is that official? Did he go there? Or are you saying?
I think judging by the emojis that he's hoping that will happen.
And as much shit as B.O.B. gets, as just a sheer play caller and coach, I actually think he's not bad at all. I think Bill O'Brien, what he did at Penn State and really with the Texans for a while there, like those offenses were solid. When you now give him too much power and he's the GM and he's doing all types of crazy shit, like that's when you don't want him at all. But as just an offensive coordinator, I'd love to see Bill O'Brien come back. Honestly, I'm with you, CJ.
All right, good enough. And we did get we do have one Russian bot watching the show, which I guess means we're doing okay. Because usually shows when nobody's watching, we don't get any Russian bots.
No.
So, thanks for making that. Thank you, Dickerson Ford. We appreciate it.
Dickerson Ford.
That's a great name. That's a good name for a character in like a movie or a screenplay.
Dickerson Ford. It actually is a great name. I'm going to screenshot that right now.
Seriously, we're going to use that. Thank you, Russian bot.
That might be like the evil principal in my TV show.
Dickerson Ford. All right, that's going to do it, right?
Yeah, I think that we were going to talk about shows we're watching and how we're surviving the offseason.
We'll talk about that next time because we went an hour even without that. So
your favorite thing, talking about random coaches for over an hour.
Well, I don't know. Talking to you is usually pretty entertaining, even if I don't care as much about the coaches. It's fun.
Cheers, guys. Well, we'll be writing these coaches up. We'll have another coaching carousel as some of these dominoes fall in a couple weeks. Next week, we will be doing our Super Bowl spectacular prop bets. As always, me, The Truth, CJ, maybe Jimbo Slice. We'll see whoever joins us next week. So we're looking forward to that. Your favorite, Super Bowl halftime show bets, all that good stuff. The deep analysis that only us degenerates will get into. So be here next Thursday and every Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern time. We will be live talking about football with you guys. It's good to see some regulars here. We're just doing it. Last year, I like that we're doing this because it's so easy in the offseason. You just kind of fall out of touch and we'll get back together in July and it kind of makes sense. But I saw we had over 300 views on our ranking show the other day. People are still talking and looking at fantasy stuff. So here we are. We're here and we love it. And we love that you guys are here. So
remaining relevant.
Thank you again so much. If you haven't already, hit that thumbs up on your way out. If you're still somehow here, I imagine you probably already did that. And if you are still already here, you probably already subscribed. But if not, please consider doing so as well.
Dickerson Ford, we wouldn't mind if you
Dickerson Ford. Yeah, come on over. But thank you guys again so much. We really, really appreciate anyone tuned in at this psycho stage of the offseason. You guys are why we do what we do. So thanks again, Wolfpack. RoastedJournal.com is where we breed and feed fantasy wolves. And in that world full of fantasy sheep, guys, be the wolf. Later.